Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is a cold night in my garage and we're going to talk about my car. We're going to talk about where it came from, where I started with this car in the 05 touring car series as it was back then, the long break that we took to build some bits in this car on a budget, and where the car is up to now. We're just going to talk about all the mods on it really for those people. So the car itself is a Ford Focus. We bought it for 400 quid as a MOT, needed a bit of work doing to it. And I spent 2015 going into 2016 building it on my sister's driveway as a genuine proper budget club racer. Tyler Motorsport did the cage in it. It was a full custom cages job, 6-point clubman. We welded that in. And the series itself was a really good sort of basic budget, standard engines. You could fit coilover suspension, you could fit uprated pads and discs, but you couldn't go for bigger brakes or bigger calipers or anything like that. It was a proper Group N style championship. It was under the Classic Touring Car Racing Club at the time, and I got enticed to it by Andy Johnson. So Andy Johnson, people will know of SVG Motorsport fame. Nowadays he's running some serious drivers in Ginettas, and he's had some real quick guys in his cars. You know, he's a guy that goes back years in motorsport, and he really introduced me to the club back then. He was the chairman, he was doing a lot of good things, and I ended up on the grid in 2016 in a very basic version of this. Cue some of the pictures going up now, and it was literally standard engine, ECU and everything like that. And 2016 really was a baptism of fire. I came into it halfway through the year at Brands Hatch, didn't do very well. The car itself was very, I kind of came into it very quickly realising that you needed to do more to get a decent result. There were some top drivers in that series. We were on mixed grids as well, so there were times where we were thrown on with Boss, there were times we were thrown on with 93s, there were times we were thrown on with the other championships, and that kind of threw an element into it as well. And I had a familiar sort of black and green theme back then, which has subsequently been taken by other people. So obviously the scheme I've got on it now is a bit different. But anyway, we kind of had a bit of a baptism of fire in 2016, but we started off, did 3 rounds there, and kind of found out what a proper traditional Group N championship was about. That's effectively what the rules were based on. It had 3 classes. I was in Class A, up to, I think it was, Class A was over 160 horsepower, Class B was 160 to 130 horsepower, and then Class C was 130 horsepower down. And that was at the flywheel. We didn't have dynos or anything like that. It was basically what your engine's classified power was when it was manufactured. So with Ford, it was the ST170. It was told by the manufacturer it had 170 horsepower. They rarely did. But I ended up with Class A, but I'm up against like Clio 182 Sports, Clio 172 Sports, Corolla T Sports, bloody Peugeot 206 180 GTIs, light French hatches, and this was, I think, 1,230 kilos we had it at in standard trim. We just couldn't compete, although, you know, when we got into 2017 in the second year of competing with it as it was, we had some real good results. Linden Hill was one of them, and it's why I'm looking forward to going back there this year with the car. Linden Hill, we kind of got into the racing a bit more and learnt about setting the car up a bit more to the way I liked to race it, and we got a pair of really good finishes at Linden Hill, hence me screaming as I crossed the line. Pair of podiums, got through to the end of the year, but unfortunately by the end of 2017 there were sort of arguments brewing amongst people in the championship, and a lot of people left, and At that point, I'd raced in the series for 2 years. It was good, but because a lot of people were leaving, I've decided I can't really stick around because I could see the series dying off. And unfortunately it did. You know, you never want to see a championship dissipate, but unfortunately it did sort of 2 years later. But it was a real good start for me with my own car. I'd raced 2 CVs before, but that was always a college race car, but it was sort of first baptism of fire. And, you know, in 2 years we'd learnt a lot and actually started off getting some good results with it. So I then decided to take some time out and we took the car apart. And 2020, just as COVID hit, we were getting ready to go back with an uprated engine, uprated bits in the gearbox, uprated everything. A bit more beefed up suspension and, you know, standalone management. This is all stuff that I'd never really got into myself. But we just worked away at it and put it all together in the car. It was a proper garage build. Friends would come in and help where they could. I would get advice where I could from the right people that I knew. Sort of had your best interests at heart. And we did one race in 2020, which is the infamous race where Muggins here put a big splitter on it, and third lap at Brands I went a bit sideways and bang, hit the bottom, and I will never live that down. Went into 2021 and we did Track Day Championship, and this was all with the uprated everything, and kind of, again, that was a baptism of fire. I've spoken about it before, had a horrid year, etc, etc. So I've gone through that, done modified Fords, done more bits to it, new gearbox, yada yada yada, and here we are. So yeah, the 05 series was really where this car started. So it's weird to be kind of sat here seeing the amount of modifications we've done to it, which is big for me. I know for a lot of people it's probably not that much of a change in the car, but for me it was huge. And certainly doing it off your own back in the garage with a limited budget is, you know, it's got to be done. It's got to be done. Proper, true budget racer. But tell you what, let's take you around the car and I'll show you some of the bits in the engine bay that I've sort of done myself, in the interior, and just generally have a look around. Right, so let me just take you around the engine bay of the Focus. So we'll start off with the engine. So this is an ST170 Zetec engine. So it's basically like your blacktop Zetec, but in what's different is it's got variable, well, it's not VVT, it's variable cam timing, and it's with this. So this comes in at about 5,500–6,000 RPM and then takes the timing, adjusts it a little bit, and then allows the cams to come in. It's very technical stuff. I don't know 100% how it works, so I'm not going to tell you how it works because I haven't a bloody clue. But yes, so this was built by MJA Race Engines, so you can see on the side there, that's the company. Andrew, Martin, Jane in the family, they you'll actually see them on Car SOS a lot, so they're on there. And they built this engine for me back in 2018, and it sat in my car for 2 years, so yeah. Good old Zetec. So this runs about 205 brake horsepower. We had 172, 173 at the hubs when we tested it for TDC. But bearing in mind that's on 17-inch wheels, and we had a different gearbox then, which was just poor. So that's the engine. The throttle bodies, I'm running a Suzuki GSXR 1000 K1 throttle bodies that came off my brother-in-law's crash motorbike. So I made sure I swooped in and got them, and it's a Dan ST Engineering kit. So that's pretty cool. You can go onto Dan ST Engineering's website and buy all the things like these trumpets, the fuel rail and the fixings and everything like that. Obviously fuel pressure regulator, everything like that. I've got electronic steering on this, so I took the electronic steering pump, the manual steering pump off, and I went for this. So this is off a Saxo or a 106, so it's electronic. So that's all good there. Now the thermostat housing, which I'm yet to test because I'm still waiting for my special coolant to turn up. So that's now fitted there. That's the billet piece. That's the main aluminium housing, which is a Turkish one. So hopefully we test that and that's all tickety-boo. Auto Specialists catch can as well there. Nice metal one that's got a bit of gunk on the bloody lip. But yeah. That's that there. We've got under here, so that bit of aluminium was shaped to house a Fiat Uno Turbo wiper motor. So as you can see, I've gone for the single wiper conversion, and I basically made up a bracket, bolted it to the existing bracketry in there, and that's where I've got my wiper set. So I've proper gone old school max power on that. Standard manifold, that's a 421 branch manifold, which is standard on the ST170s. If I wasn't changing to EcoBoost, that's what I will be changing next and getting a brand new one made, probably by Simpson or Edwards Motorsport, one of those guys. So yeah, it is a bit messy in the engine bay. I'm not a car builder, so I kind of get that. Bit of a subliminal message here as well from last year. He does love an EP3, even though he's never driven one. And then the world's biggest catch can, because the 3 litre one was cheaper on eBay than a 2 litre one, and it looked nice anyway, so I was like, yeah, what's a litre in it, you know what I mean? So that's our engine bay. I should probably actually explain a bit more about the engine. So it's had cams, it's lightened and balanced, it's had engine light headwork, standard compression, yeah, just very light, very responsive, billet flywheel. And I've got a kit car alternator on there, which, to be honest, can be a bit problematic and a pain in the arse at times, but we'll see. So that's the engine bay. I think at this point, let's talk about the gears. Gearbox is an MTX 75 gearbox, actually from a Mondeo. We had some engineering did last year. So you'll see down there, sorry the lights are poor, but there is a bit of aluminium welded in there to convert it from a Mondeo MTX so it would fit a Focus mount, so we did that. That's got a plated diff and a shorter final drive from M Factory. The plated diff is a CAS diff. That only did 2 events last year, so I'll be using that for 3 events with that gearbox, and then both the gearbox and engine will be coming out for the EcoBoost conversion, so many goings on there. So I think that, yeah, that properly concludes the engine bay. I know I keep saying it, but that properly concludes it. So let's go inside. Right, we're in the car now. So as you can see, it's very, it's a bit cramped, but I've got a nice Motomech steering wheel here with a few bits on it. It's never had a radio hooked up for it. I never hooked up the flasher relay, so they're a bit redundant. That's a spare switch, and I've actually got a start switch on the steering wheel. So if I need to crank the car over, it's actually on the steering wheel, which I kind of had the idea for standing starts. You never know when you stall the engine and you're flapping at a control panel. If you've got your hands on the steering wheel already, you can just go bang and hopefully get it started and get away before you get hit. That was the idea behind it, but yeah, yet to see that happen. That's the instrumentation in front of me. That's changing for a DigiDash soon, but I'll just get that to synchronise. So that is a Racetech tachometer with shift lights, and I've got a water gauge there and a mechanical oil pressure gauge with a little volt gauge over in the corner to tell me what my battery's doing. Nice cut down focus dash that I hand flocked myself with a homemade kit, probably way back when, yeah, 2016 I must have done that, and a handmade carbon panel that Phil Neal sorted out for us back in the day. The doors, actually, before I put anything out, so the doors on this are fiberglass, so yeah, they weigh about 3 kilos each. They're not very heavy at all, and that's part of what I like about this car. Everything we've made so light. The tailgate on this is fiberglass as well. I'm looking to move to a fiberglass bonnet because the one that I've got on there at the moment is just a steel skin and it's still pretty heavy, and a fiberglass one I can maybe keep the rigidity of it but actually make it a little bit lighter. The gear shifter, I've got a raised gear shifter here, and I've got the 5-speed focus mechanism on here. The only problem is I fitted this as a short shift, and I think that is part of why I had so many problems with misshifts, especially at the last round at Brands. So one of the jobs I'm going to do before I go racing, or I'd certainly go testing, is get a standard 5-speed MTX shifter fitted to this, and then convert it to this. So this is something that was on eBay as a JDM style. Move the shifter back. Obviously, I sit in a further back position, so that's why this comes in to kind of bring the shifter back, and I've got it slanted at an angle back towards me. So it's standard first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then reverse. But I went from third to second, and that could have been disaster, real disaster. So instead of doing that, I did that. And if I didn't realise and put the clutch in, that would have been a disaster. Down in the footwell, I've got an OBP pedal box. I'll just get a bit of light out. and shine down there. So I've got an OBP pedal box. It's a track focus box. We made up a frame on the floor, and we've actually got the cylinders pointing away from us. Probably a bad decision to buy that at the time, but it's just what we had with the budget. Made a little control panel here. So this is just a bit of aluminium that I've wrapped, and then I use my cutter to cut all these bits out. Now the wiring loom on this car is all made by myself. Nick Holmes did a bit of the rear loom for the rear lighting, and everything comes to a big bus bar inside here and a mini fuse box. I'm not going to show you in here because it does look a bit like Spaghetti Junction, and because it's hidden away, that means no one can see it. But it's got a little fuse box in there with a bus bar which connects to this master switch, and the ignition is plumbed into this as well, so that when I cut the switch, it cuts the ECU, which is mounted over there. So that's my ME221 ECU. So got my switches here: ignition, my pumps, wiper, main lights, rain lights, fan, steering. And I haven't got the stickers came off for that, but that's left and right for my indicators. There's no clicker relay on it though, so it's just a standard light. So if I need someone that's lapping me, especially with the modified Fords, I can just literally flick that forward a few times and they know that I'm staying to the right. Well, that's a theory anyway. But yeah, that's a little bit of the interior of the Focus. The seat that I'm using is actually, I'll just turn the camera around. So turn the camera around there. The seat that I've got is this lovely XL Corbeau. Everyone knows I'm a fat boy. So yeah, this is the Corbeau seat that I have in the car. And it's very comfortable. I've got the lateral headrest as well, and I'm seated quite far back in the car. So that's quite nice. We're on welded bars on the seat. And then you've got your standard safety equipment there. 2 pumps in the back enclosed in a box. So I've got one in the tank, and I've got a Bosch 44 style pump in the back that pumps the fuel to the front for the throttle bodies. So that's all in place. When I do the engine conversion, I don't have to do a lot of work at all. I can just hook it up and away I go.